Welcome back to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. Join me along with industry leaders and friends on a quest to get more people through the gym door and eating and living healthier. Join me where evidence meets empathy while rejecting fitness industry fads and extremism. Let's begin. Dr. Spencer Nadolsky, it's been a really long time since I've had you on. You got to go way back for a previous episode. And your episodes are always some of the most popular. So it's great to see you. I know you're doing incredible work in the space. I consider you to be the industry leading physician on obesity and a lot of the related things about it. So welcome back.
Thanks, man. Always a pleasure.
Good. Okay. So let's go right to it. Why is obesity as pervasive as it is in modern society? Loaded question.
Yeah, because people get into this fight of it's genetics versus environment, and it's both. So like the genetics haven't really changed too much. We already know that. Although there could be some slight shifts here and there. But in general, it's our environment. Now the problem is how are we going to get our environment back to what it was decades ago? Not gonna happen. You see a lot of push to figure that. It's not gonna happen. You're not gonna put the whatever back into the bottle. So um uh we have to find a way forward to kind of fix it. But in general, genetics kind of load the gun. This is what George Bray is, an amazing obesity researcher and physician, old now, but he made this comment about how genetics load the gun and environment pull the trigger. So we always had these genetics. And even back then, decades ago, you saw there were larger people. Those people back then that were larger are extremely large now, though. Like this is the genetics of it. So we see that shift all the way over now in this current environment. So the thing that changed was the environment. Yes, we're going to talk about the medicines and stuff like that, but that's the gist. But the genetics were underlying that really accelerated, because there are people that are, despite this environment, they stay lean and they're not even trying. Like, it's not like someone who's like just working out all their life. They like go through life staying lean despite eating absolute garbage food. So the genetics still are a very important part.
How much of this is appetite dysregulation as far as genetics goes? Is it the major thing?
Yeah, most of the genetics we see related to obesity are appetite related in the central nervous system. So that's what people, the insulin guys, the keto guys are like, no, it's just the insulin from the guy. No, there may be a small little bit of insulin related to body mass, but when it comes to truly what's related, it's appetite.
And this is why GLP-1 agonist medications are now both this powerful intervention, but also the source of controversy. And for anybody who's really interested in this, and you work with Crystal, I've had Dr. Crystal Guevara on not terribly long ago. And, I think she's a subject matter expert on that, as are you. So, do you have any poignant thoughts on what's going on in that current conversation?
This episode is brought to you by Macros First. I've always struggled with nutrition tracking apps, even the slightest hassle or friction, and it breaks my habit. That changed with Macros First. When I tried it, I told my friend, the founder, Jacob, quote, this is, let's just call it a certain other app on steroids. It's the easiest app to use, and it has a free barcode scanner, which if you use tracking apps, you know this is a really big deal. I recommend Macros First to all my clients and friends, and even had them sponsor my 2024 conference. Here's an example feature I love: auto-calculate food portions. Let's say you've got 30 grams of protein left for the day, and you're thinking, how much chicken breast do I need to hit that? In other apps, you're left guessing serving sizes, hoping you get close to your 30-gram goal. With Macros First, just tell it the target you want to hit, and it tells you exactly how much to eat. No more macro Tetris. Other apps ask, how much do you eat? Macros First also lets you ask, how much should I eat? And while Macros First's premium version is incredible for any user, the basic version, which is nowhere near basic, is free to use. So you can go to either the Apple Store or Google Play to download.
Yeah, it kind of, these things have brought it to light because people didn't understand the appetite dysregulation. We had some of these older drugs that were, essentially amphetamine-like. Phentermine is one that people know. It's a sympathomimetic. It works on adrenaline, norepinephrine, and it can have an appetite effect. But it wasn't until people started taking these, and not just any GLP-1 receptor agonists, it's the newer versions, because these things have been out for a couple of decades, where people are starting to go like, oh, you know what? When they start taking this feels what people that don't struggle with their weight must feel like. The thoughts about food are gone or diminished, reduced. The just hunger after you eat a pretty, what should be a healthy, satiating, good portion, wanting to go get another portion. Now they don't feel like doing that. Wanting to go get the dessert, whatever that they're craving is gone. So when people start taking these medicines, it finally is bringing to light this concept of the disease of obesity is like, oh, this makes sense now. It didn't make as much sense to people before the medicine because there wasn't a way to contrast how they felt versus what people feel like when they don't have that struggle with appetite.
How much of a multiplier is food marketing? Obviously access, but specifically ultra processed food. And again, there's a lot of argument about processed foods.
Yeah, I mean, put it simply, if we all grew up in a little village on an island, we had to basically for our own plants and produce and go fishing to get our protein and maybe have a little bit of livestock or whatever. And there were not these foods, you wouldn't see obesity. It just wouldn't happen. So like these foods, they're studying what's the cause. It's the hyperpalatability. We've always had like pies and stuff like that, and in the 50s, for a long time, many decades. I don't know when the hell were pies invented. I don't even know. Google that. Ask Claude or ChatGPT when pie. But anyway, we've always had good tasting food like that. It's these newer snacky, yummy foods that completely bypass our, not completely, but strongly bypass our appetite centers in our brain, and we eat more of them despite more calories, whereas other foods in the past, we regulate pretty well.
This episode is brought to you by KNKG, my favorite gym bag brand, and now my favorite backpack for travel. I used to travel like an amateur and check a suitcase. This meant hassle checking in, waiting for luggage, and stress over whether my bag would make it to my destination with me. Even my roller carry-on didn't allow for versatility once I got to my destination. And I travel more than ever, and I need quality, durability, and convenience. And when I met up with friends at fitness conferences, I noticed many traveled just with a backpack, so I started researching backpacks and brands. And I kept coming back to KNKG because I've had one of their duffel bags for years, so I bought their Edge backpack, and it goes everywhere with me. And my KNKG backpacks, plural, now I have two of them, the Edge and the Conquer backpack, double as perfect travel bags for a week of travel or everyday gym use. And I can save you 15% on yours. Go to www.knkg.com/Andrew59676. That's www.knkg.com/Andrew59676, or go to the link in the show notes.
It makes sense that when you take a population that has differential appetite, genetics, and you expose them to this marketing and this access to all this food, and there's obviously there's dynamics to socio-demographic stuff when it comes to access as well, right? Right. And you sort of alluded to the other end of that, those things, when thrown at people, some people simply just don't seem to have the food noise or the issues with feeling satiated, whereas other people, and again, genetics, have really, really hard times with it. So GLP-1s, like right now, I think there are two kind of narratives with the anti-GLP-1 agonist crowd. I think a lot of it's just loud talking head status stuff, whatever. One is some of these people think because they were probably genetically gifted, work out a ton, they've got their lifestyle on lockdown, there may or may not be performance enhancing drugs in there. And they're worried that all of a sudden everybody will have access to the status that they've achieved. And that's the only thing they've gained status over is their physique. And then they tend to virtue signal over that status. And now they're kind of angry at the fact that they think that GLP-1 agonists are somehow going to make everybody look like them, which of course is very unlikely. Do you want to run with that? The second thing was the side effects, the overblown claims about side effects.
Yeah, the side effects ones. Yeah, we'll get into that here. Yeah, it's a little bit of a weight bias type of thing. Like it's similar to like it would be analogous to like you had to walk everywhere before you didn't have a horse. Then you see these other people, they have a horse. And then the people with the horses, they see people with cars. And it's like, oh, how dare they use technology to improve their lives? We have iPhones instead of regular home phones, and instead of rotary phones, if you remember having.
Hey, I grew up with that. Okay, the rotary
Yeah.
phone on a cord in the kitchen.
Yeah,
Okay,
terrible.
yeah.
And and then you go back even before, we got telegraphs and whatever, the Morse code. I don't know, you know, that type of thing. So it's like we're figuring out technology to improve our lives, but it's because it has to do with weight, and we put weight and bodies on a pedestal of morality. That's kind of what you see, and that's why people get so mad about it. It's like, man, how can you get mad at somebody improving their life? Because it's true that somebody, is worked really hard to develop their body. Some people don't, though. Like I said, there's some people that just go through life lean, and they're not even trying. They're not even trying an iota. It's like, does that person deserve anything? No, it's just they're genetically like that. But people get mad because, these people did work hard. And so now they're seeing people take the medicine. What they don't know is that that other person had been trying extremely hard to be another way, and they simply could not due to, I don't think people are, there are a lot, I'm not going to say people aren't lazy. There are a lot of lazy people out there. It's just, that's the key. But a lot of these, most of my patients, they come in talking about all the efforts that they've put in for diet and exercise, and just only to just suffer with not being able to lose the weight. So it's just a weight. We call it a weight bias, or an obesity bias, where you just you, you think poorly of these folks.
Do you think that within this particular tribe that demonizes it, it's a socially acceptable within their community way to shame people?
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, I think in the next 10 years or so, I think most people are going to be taking, I think everybody's going to be taking these medicines. Because what we're going to see, I think, is that, like, they haven't done the studies yet, but I think we're going to see that, like, someone like me may need to use it for cardiovascular disease prevention, even not losing much weight off of it. Stuff like that. And then it's going to become so pervasive with everybody taking it, everybody, to where the stigma, it's already improving. We're starting to see it because people are speaking out about it, celebrities and everything. There's still celebrities that try to hide it, and it's like, you're not hiding anything. You're taking one of these medicines. There's no way you did that on your own, because we've seen the multiple times you've tried in the past, type of thing. It's like, clearly you're taking the medicine. But most people are starting to be open about it, and I think it's helping with the stigma surrounding and the shame surrounding the medicine.
How valid are the reports of this helping people improve issues with other addictions, maybe alcoholism, smoking, potentially even gambling?
Yeah, I published a study on some of our retrospective data on it, and there's finally a randomized trial looking at it. And there's some more coming down the pipeline that look really cool. The drug, like, I'll bet the farm that these things are eventually approved for substance abuse disorders. Alcohol specifically, patients are just like, I don't know, I don't want it anymore. It's weird after they were drinking a bottle of wine per night. Yeah.
This also, we're operating within the belief, well, some people know better, that like the GLP-1 agonist medications are as they are. They're rapidly improving and developing superior versions of this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're at the tip of the iceberg. This is going to be, now they have to do all the safety trials, because every time they do it and modify it and add a different receptor that it's hitting, they got to start all over and go like, okay, we know that the GLP-1 receptor agonists are cardiovascularly beneficial. Like, we've seen that across the board. But what if, like, tirzepatide, for example, they added has another receptor agonism called GIP. And so now they're doing a study on that. When they add in the glucagon component for some of these other newer drugs, they're going to have to repeat. They're going to have to have a cardiovascular trial for all these things. So they just have to be really careful doing that. But yeah.
All right. So now this goes into the discussion about having to continue to take it. So, quote, You generally have to take GLP-1 meds indefinitely, just like you generally have to keep exercising and following your diet to keep weight off. Astonishing, I know. End quote. Talk to me about this.
Yeah. So it's just like think about blood pressure. It's the easiest one to think of. Person's been doing diet and exercise, their blood pressure stays 150 over 95 or whatever. Should be 128 over 80, actually below that. They're doing everything when it comes to lifestyle. Doctor goes, all right, we're going to start you on a blood pressure medicine. Let's say lisinopril or something similar. Blood pressure gets down to goal. Sometimes they have to add in another blood pressure medicine even. The blood pressure gets down to 115 over 75. It would be like similar to the doctor going like, all right, your blood pressure's good. Let's take you off the medicine. And then seeing that blood pressure just come back up. The underlying cause for most of these people that can't lose the weight and keep it off is the dysregulated appetite. Their appetite, when they lose that weight especially, gets ramped up. And so the ability for them to stick to those habits that are conducive to keeping the weight off and lower calorie diets, physical activity, are then thrown off because of their appetite. Like when you have that high appetite, it's like, how are you going to stick to that diet? It's like, I got to have another portion. I got to have this and that. It's your body will continue to fight to have those things. Whereas when you just continue the medicine, no, I don't need to have them. I'm good.
Two quick thoughts. One is if someone's really interested in a lot of why people, as you lose weight, hunger builds and you struggle to keep it off. The book, The Hungry Brain by Stefan Guillenet, I think is probably like the best treatment of that. Okay. Bring me back here. How about this? Okay. What do you say to people who claim there's no relationship between your level of adiposity and long-term metabolic health outcomes?
Yeah, this has been pretty studied extensively. You can literally see metabolic health changes when people gain weight and when they lose that weight. Now, having said that, there's a very small percentage. It's less than 10% of people with a good amount of in the obesity range of adipose tissue, and they don't seem to have those common markers that we see. So, like elevations in their triglyceride, lowering of their high density lipoprotein cholesterol. We don't see increases in their blood sugar. We don't see increases in their blood pressure. There are some of those people. In fact, there's like a patient that had it was like 300 or 400 pounds. They didn't have any of those. They do happen from time to time. Relatively rare. Now, the issue is they've taken those people and looked at studies and tried to follow them long term. And what you see is that a lot of these people, or most of them, transition eventually into what we'd call a metabolically unhealthy obesity. On top of that, they seem to have just a higher risk of cardiovascular disease events over time. So it's possible that you are metabolically healthy now, and if you keep doing the good habits, you may stay that way for long term, but you do have a higher risk of transitioning, and you're still at a higher risk than someone who's lean and metabolically healthy. Even if you maintain that metabolically healthy obesity, you're still at a higher risk. Now, that doesn't mean you must lose that weight. It just means you got to understand the risk, and then you treat them accordingly with weighing the benefits and risks of staying that same weight.
And I often see that the same sort of, and I find they're the talking heads, and they've got kind of their own agenda. They'll often wave around this sort of false dichotomy that, well, because losing weight and especially eating disorders equals bad, therefore it's safer to, stay, obese.
Yeah.
Do you have any nuance to add to that one?
Yeah, it's just like you said, it's a false dichotomy. It's absolutely possible that you can harm yourself by trying to diet too much. It can be psychologically harmful. But it doesn't mean that if you found a safe way to sustainably lose that adipose tissue, it'd be incorrect to say you wouldn't be healthier to do that. So saying that everybody that tries to lose weight gets a eating disorder and ends up bad psychologically, that's wrong. We know that's not true. And we also know that there are harms for continuing to hold on to the adipose tissue. Now, you can't force people to lose weight. You just talk about the harms and the risks and benefits of that type of thing. But yeah, I just, false dichotomies are just, those are some of the things that drive me the most insane online. I'm like, in the straw man argument, it's always false dichotomies and straw man arguments. That's what you see. Like, yeah, like what they're saying, if you diet, you're not going to be able to keep the weight off, and then you're going to yo-yo. You might as well stay the same weight. It's bad to diet. You'll end up harming yourself more. It's like, well, that's not always true. Not everybody needs these medicines. We do see it's not a huge percentage, but there's a small percentage of people that lose a significant amount of weight and keep it off with just lifestyle alone. That person didn't get harmed. They seem to be doing a lot better. There are people as well that struggle and that continue to try to diet, and they make themselves psychologically miserable, and they were never going to be able to lose the weight in the first place. So now they're just harming themselves because they're just trying to continually diet when they're really just spinning their wheels. So like both situations probably not good. So like let's just work in the gray area and help people out.
So to what degree does exercise, cardiovascular exercise, strength training, managing nutrition, and someone who, let's say, is a higher body fat percentage, which can be associated with increased risk, but they're very, very good with these habits and they're maintaining weight? Because I think here's one of the other things that most people fail to understand is very few people, I would assume, who are, have unchecked lifestyle behavior that's leading to weight gain are stable. They reach a weight where they actually stay stable. There is a gradual, perpetual increase in body weight, which I think is risky. So how powerful is it if someone's able to just rate it in where they're no longer gaining weight and they're living a very otherwise healthy?
Yeah, I mean, like let's say you're saying they have they have the obesity, they have a lot of body fat, but their lifestyle is pretty good and they're not gaining weight.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a lot better than someone who's metabolically unhealthy. They have high blood pressure, high triglycerides, high blood sugars, and they're slowly gaining weight. Now that person still probably has a high risk of disease and cardiovascular disease compared to someone who's leaner who continues those habits, but that person is much healthier than someone who has that metabolically unhealthy. So yeah, that's we talk about what it's like on the inside that counts. These other things do count for something other than just the number on the scale.
How important is where you have body fat? We always hear about, visceral body fat in between the organs being worse. And to what degree is this genetic, and to what degree can lifestyle factor like stress influence where body fat is stored?
Unfortunately, it's mostly genetic. I mean, there's some, if anybody wants to really dive down some very interesting rabbit holes, a guy named Samuel Klein. I go to his lectures all the time when I go to these obesity conferences. And they've done some just really cool studies trying to tease this thing out. It's really mostly genetic though, like where you store this fat, and where you store the fat is very important in terms of metabolic effects. Like where you store the fat may not be as important for the physical effects, so like the knee pain, sleep apnea if you gain a lot of weight around your neck and that type of thing. But for metabolic effects, it's where you store the fat is probably the most important. Like I said, I've had patients that are 400, 500 pounds, and they're like, man, this person's cholesterol is better than mine. Like, because honestly, if the body stores fat in the way that it's supposed to, it should be mostly subcutaneous, ideally around your hips and thighs and that type of thing. When you see somebody storing it mostly centrally, and when we see these people, they have skinny arms, skinny legs, and a larger abdominal circumference. People call it a pot belly. I don't know if that's is that bad to say? I'm not even sure, but
I've never heard anybody get bad about that, or a beer belly.
A larger belly. Yeah. So, and those people are extremely high risk for metabolic syndrome. They probably already have metabolic syndrome, but they're at very high risk for that. Versus someone, they're storing the fat around their thighs and legs, and their blood, everything looks great and metabolically. So and it's genetic. They've looked at this. It's genetically determined. Lifestyle probably plays a role. When we lift weights, and exercise, we have we have nutrient partitioning effects. So like ideally those calories, instead of being stored viscerally, abdominally, we're storing them and using them in our muscle. But to completely shift, there are some drugs that kind of shift where we store the fat and kind of help our fat metabolism a little bit. But yeah, it's a lot of it's genetics.
You mentioned sleep apnea. So obviously I opened this up with references to metabolic health risks, which, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, atherosclerosis. I always screw up saying that one. Certain types of lifestyle cancers, diabetes. But then sleep apnea is another one of these things that's really bad. Are there any other, and you also mentioned knee pain.
Yeah.
What are some of the other risks associated with, let's say, high levels of obesity?
Yeah, urinary incontinence, reflux, having a lot of, weight abdominally and that intra-abdominal pressure. So, same thing with urinary incontinence. You start looking at the cancers, more adipose-related cancers that likely have to do with estrogen, increases in estrogen in the body. Um, Obviously, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, even things like, asthma increased propensity to things like asthma. Those are things we don't as much think about, but it seems to be an increased risk. But the direct things that we know are obviously the lipids, the atherosclerosis, like you said before, the blood pressure, that type of thing.
What about cholesterol? So I keep seeing things usually on Twitter, bad habit of mine to scroll, or X, whatever it is now. And people argue about this stuff, but what is the riskier dynamic to cholesterol? The LDL number, what's going on there?
Yeah, well, that's a deep dive. But so the you were at my lecture, gosh, I think at the fitness summit of like 10 years ago now. I can't believe it's been that
It's
long.
2017 for sure. Yeah, I've seen you there. That's when we first met. And then I saw you at the L2 summit, which would have been 2018 here in Edmonton. So yeah.
Oh, God, I can't believe it's been that long. Anyway, so LDL cholesterol, there's these that we call apolipoprotein B containing particles, and these particles can penetrate your endothelial, your arteries, and it doesn't mean they're going to start causing plaque when they get through there. They can come back out, but if they get stuck in there, they get modified, oxidized within there, they can start this immunological cascade of atherosclerosis. LDL particles are the most common, what we call apolipoprotein B containing particles. LDL particles are absolutely atherogenic potential, causing particles. What some people say is like, well, if you're metabolically healthy, that doesn't really matter so much. That's what usually the argument is. It's like, if everything's healthy, but your LDL cholesterol is high, you have nothing to worry about. That's not true. We have people that have what's called familial hypercholesterolemia, who have genetic disruptions in their LDL cholesterol metabolism that causes their LDL cholesterol to get really high in their blood and their serum. And they can be extremely metabolically healthy, but because of those high levels, they start developing extensive atherosclerosis. So we call it an independent risk factor, meaning it will cause it independently of their blood pressure, independently of their insulin sensitivity or insulin resistance, independently of anything else. So, not everybody though. Like some people have other genetics that may decrease the propensity for those particles to start atherosclerosis. But in general, yeah, LDL cholesterol, and specifically the particles or the apolipoprotein B, independent risk factor. Yeah.
Is there a number above which that we're worried about?
Yeah. So it's a good question. In general, we combine it with your other risk factors. In general, if you had a very low level, let's say, and most people don't have this, but let's say below, it's around 50 or so, 50, 40 or 50. Most people don't have this. You have to be on a drug to do this, or you're like a vegan, plant-based person that has also favorable genetics. In general, below that level, you don't see atherosclerosis in those individuals. Having said that, population normal, I say normal, I mean average really when I say that. We're somewhere around 100 to 130, what we call milligrams per deciliter. There's different units across the world, but In America, we use milligrams per deciliter. And so we see it at 100 to 130 milligrams per deciliter. Most doctors won't recommend statin therapy or lipid-lowering drugs in that level if everything else is normal, meaning you're super healthy. But having said that, you're still at a higher risk than if your LDL cholesterol were below 70 or below 50 even. It's just that we start weighing the benefits and the risks of that therapy. I take a two lipid lowering drugs. My LDL cholesterol is somewhere in between that 100 to 130 range, just like I said. But I take two small doses of stuff and I get my LDL cholesterol below 60. Because I'm like, you know what? I'm 41 now. I'm not even messing around. So that's what I do. But there's no threat. The guidelines create thresholds depending on your risk. So if you're very high risk, let's say you had a heart attack. If somebody had a heart attack, we want their LDL cholesterol like nothing. We want below like 55 in general. It used to be 70, and some people still use 70. If you're a little bit at higher risk but never had a heart attack, some people use that 100 level. But in general, when I start lipid lowering therapy in people and I want to be aggressive, I'm getting them at least below 70. Um, the the range, the level, the threshold where we're like, hey, if you're metabolically healthy and you have 190 and above LDL cholesterol level, that person likely has familial hypercholesterolemia unless they're on a ketogenic diet and it's keto induced. But in those people, we're starting lipid lowering therapy. That's the gist. But you'll see these different thresholds. It's 130, 160, 190, 100, 70, those types of things.
What is lipidemia? You were the first person lipidema. You were the
Lipedema.
first person I ever saw mention it. And I remember this a few years back. And I believe at the time it was certainly not well understood. And to describe, we've all had clients I can think of. I literally have a client coming in today who definitely deals with it, where they tend to store body fat in their extremities. It seems to almost be more fibrous. It seems to be resistant to calorie reduction, fat loss.
Yeah.
Some people have even described it as like having almost like bags of peas in their
Yeah.
legs. Okay, so what's going on there?
Yeah. So I had similar kind of experience in private practice like 10 years ago, helping someone lose weight. And I'm like, back then I did have some GLP-1 medicines. They weren't the newer ones, but I had that. I had these other medicines. This person wasn't losing weight. They didn't teach us about this in medical school, even though it's like, people are like, is it rare? It's like, well, it's like 10% of women. It's something, it's not that rare. Even
Is it
though
more prevalent more prevalent in women than men?
yeah, like you don't see it in men. There's a genetic component to it. And someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see it in men. Um, uh, but it's relatively common. But there's different degrees of it. And just to state, I am not a lipedema expert. I am an obesity expert. I have to know lipedema because it looks similar to obesity, but it's not obesity. There's a genetic component to it, and you can give people bariatric surgery. You can throw them on these drugs, and you may reduce this what we call the subcutaneous fat that's kind of surrounding that area. So the areas will shrink, but some people they'll lose all this weight like around their waist and all these other places, and then they'll still have these big blocky legs, and you're like, well, you got to eat less and whatever. And it's like, no, you will not reduce that to some large extent. So a lot of these people need surgery, but the gist is it's more fibrous connective tissue compared to just straight up what we call subcutaneous fat. And I don't know if it's something about how lipolysis enzymes like hormone sensitive lipase and some of these other enzymes and ability for the body to break down the tissue. I haven't had a great answer on that. I think this needs to be studied a little bit more, but like it doesn't respond it either doesn't respond or not nearly as well to a calorie deficit. And you'll see it. I mean, people will see it. They're thin everywhere else and there's big blocky legs. And you can get it in your arms and stuff too, but like it's mostly you see it in legs. They'll call them, cankles. It's a derogatory term, but like they'll see this kind of cuff around their ankles, and it's like, why can't they lose it? It's like, well, that's probably what it is. You get some pain. Yeah, like you said, it kind of feels like peas and that type of thing, but it's pain and uncomfortable feeling. Truly, like I notice it when I'm like, especially because I do a lot of online. I don't see people in person. When somebody's like, I had bariatric surgery and I have them on the medicine, they're losing weight, but they're like, my legs are still big. I'm not losing weight anymore. And I'm like, show me a video and a picture. And I'm like, oh God. And that's what it is. Then they go get, a lot of times they go get surgery.
So surgery is the only intervention that seems to work at this
There's
stage?
some other conservative. Again, there's probably if there's somebody listening that's actually does this for a living, they're like, no, some of our conservative therapies work. In my experience, I've never seen conservative therapy work that well. GLP-1s can help reduce kind of some of the pain and inflammations and some of the weight in general, but not a ton. There's some studies with the GLP-1 medicines and lipedema, but like so many of my patients do that, and then they're going to get surgery. They do the liposuction. They have to do it a special way, and they break up that fibrotic tissue and suck out the fat, and then they're just immensely better.
Got a few things I wanted to poke at there. Losing my train of thought, I guess. I apologize. Okay. These people often dealt with stigma where, you get, whether it's coaches who didn't know any better, even physicians, I'm sure, who didn't understand what this was or still don't, and then still get on with it. Well, you have to eat less, you have to move more. And this person's, crying at you saying, no, like I'm doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
Any elaboration on that phenomenon?
Yeah. If you understand the lipedema, you're going to know that you're not going to have an effect on that. It's funny. I've had some patients, again, because I'm telemedicine. I'm not looking at I'm looking at you the way I look at them through a Zoom type of thing. And they've listened to some of these podcasts and posts, and they're like, I'm pretty sure I have that. And I'm like, of course I missed it. I can't see you in person. I don't look at it. Don't tell everybody to stand up and get in a bathing suit and spin around. So it's if trainers out there understand it, go look up the Lipidema Foundation. You get all the information you want to know. Lipidema Foundation, great website. I don't make any money from it. It's nonprofit. Read about it. You're going to see that, oh, you know what? I think I had some clients like that. That's why we couldn't help them lose more weight, especially around their legs. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
And I guess this goes hand in hand with where you said earlier, there's more risk where someone stores disproportionately more body fat around their midsection internal organs. Are there increased metabolic health risks with lipedema, or you mentioned pain? Okay. So I was assuming it's certainly not comparable to, visceral body fat storage, but you mentioned pain. So are there any other associated health risks with it?
No, it's a lot of it's discomfort. There are some other related diseases, mast cell activation syndrome. I'm not an expert in it, but so I don't really want to get too much into that, but that's kind of one of the comorbidities you see with it. And I'm not entirely sure why those go together. Likely genetic, I'm not really sure. But otherwise it's really discomfort and an aesthetic issue for that person. And metabolically, they're actually really healthy.
This has been, I think, valuable because there's probably a lot of people listening who had no idea. There's probably going to be people go like, oh my God, I deal with that. Or there's this person I know, or I have this client who deals with it
every time.
So I'm praying that this increases just the awareness of this, which if for nothing else, it helps have empathy for oneself or the people we're working with to go, this isn't a discipline problem, right? Now, what about the flip side where someone hears this and goes, oh, that's what I got. It's like, no, you just got body fat. Your body fat is too high.
Yeah. I mean, that's why they require a diagnosis, so that's why I suggest go to the Lipidema Foundation, really go through it. And then you got to get a good doctor, because most doctors won't have heard of this. And I don't blame them. They weren't taught it. I don't know why it's not taught. I'm not sure. Hopefully it's being taught now in med schools and residencies, but I have a feeling it's probably not. So that's why you have these awareness campaigns and that type of thing. So that's why you just need to get a diagnosis. And you got to go to somebody that understands it enough to go, yep, that's it. And beyond that, then if you But if you take one of these medicines, you had bariatric surgery, and that like you notice those things aren't changing, the likelihood that that is the case.
Now, you allude to something that I'm going to have some fun with, because you are very active on social media. You're the meme doctor. And oh my God, just because of the crazy nature of, the worldwide belief system around obesity and pharmaceuticals, because you run the gamut, you'll be accused of shilling for pharmaceutical companies and drugs and surgeries. And you're like, I don't know anybody who's in your space who advocates more for healthy nutrition and active lifestyle, right? That's it. These people seem to miss that. But we've got common misconceptions. You're often accused of, or you hear this stuff about doctors being incentivized to prescribe drugs because they are paid for it. Doctors are incentivized to keep you sick. Debunk this nonsense.
Yeah, we have laws against kickbacks for prescribing medicine. Everybody's like, you must get kickbacks for prescribing these medicines. I'm like, no, my patients will seek me out, and the way that I make money is I don't take insurance. So I charge $150 a month through my Vineyard program, and my patient panel's closed, but I have other doctors. And so
where are you licensed, by the way? Forgive me interrupting, but where are you licensed to practice? So if someone's listening going, oh my God, I want you as my doctor.
Yeah, well, so Vineyard, we're in 47 different states. We're going to be in all 50 here soon. I'm in 28 different states in the United States. Can't do it in Canada. They have different whatever
We're tricky.
licenses and stuff there. Yeah, you guys got all sorts of different stuff up there. What was the question? I don't even remember
that. I'm sorry, I hijacked you, but it was just about debunking this idea that you guys can get
debunking.
kickbacks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. We legally cannot make money. Like, what about the opioids? I'm like, I don't know what was going on in the 90s, because I hear stories about doctors getting cruises and sports games tickets, going to football, baseball, whatever, basketball games, cruises, whatever. Illegal now. We legally cannot make money. Now, there are some people that get around this. They actually buy compounded medicines, and then they increase the price and then sell them directly to patients. I personally think that's unethical, but somehow they get around that. So yeah, those doctors are literally making money from prescribing those drugs to you. But if I prescribe a drug that then you go to the pharmacy to get it, I cannot make any money. So then people will play the gotcha card, because some insurances, not big pharma, incentivize for having a percentage of your patients being vaccinated. And so see, you're getting kickbacks. It's not that. First of all, I don't take insurance, so it doesn't matter for me. I'm not making any money from insurance. I literally do not take insurance. I cannot get bonuses from them. But yeah, technically a doctor could, if they get more patients vaccinated and there's some sort of incentive from that insurance to have a percentage of the patient population vaccinated, they can make some more money doing that. But the reason the insurance company does that is because they want to make money, because they know that person's going to be healthier and do better over a long time and not get hospitalized. So it's like, it always keeps coming back to that would be beneficial. But the doctor doesn't make big pharma kickbacks from medicine. And I don't know if it's the opioid thing, if they were, again, possible they were illegally doing it, but it's actually all out in the open. You can look up the Sunshine Act, the open payments. You can look at how much money, but a lot of it's all big pharma lunches. Like my brother, someone was like, you looked like you made a few $1,000s or whatever. And it's like, they didn't give me any money. It's because they come in and provide lunch for his employees just to be able to talk to him. I'm in the cloud, so I don't have big lunches. Although I got invited to a lunch. Sometimes I just decline it because it's only it's like $30, I'm like, but I don't make that money. It's just a free lunch. So yeah, it's a myth that we make money. People get really mad about that, by the way.
I can see that. I think the type of people who are going to be mad about that are not going to be convinced no matter the evidence. You reminded me, there was, so I'm originally from the island of Newfoundland, province in Eastern Canada. And I remember probably mid 2000s, there was a scandal. It was when OxyContin was, of course, very much blowing up and a problem. And there was a local doctor, and I don't know all the specifics, but he did ultimately, I believe, criminally charged, certainly lost his license but there was something going on where he had a group of younger people. He was prescribing a lot of OxyContin to them. There's some sort of weird sex stuff going on there. And there was a young man that I knew. He was a friend of my friend's brother. And he got really down and eventually, unfortunately, just due to lifestyle, died, some years later. But he was hip deep in the middle of this stuff. And yeah, they were basically just pumping out and getting access. And then, of course, this stuff was being sold on the street. But this doctor ultimately did get discovered. But I mean, that's not normal. That's a very unethical person who basically just sold his soul and, paid the consequences for it. Right. But I guess these sort of incidents can cast a cloud on the industry as a whole.
That's right. Yeah, that it's illegal now. Again, there's some bad players. I don't know. It's bad in the past. Like there's some weird stuff that went on, but it's illegal now. I don't know.
Always will be. Every industry in every shape or form will always have that edge of the bell curve that will cash in for money, do unethical shit.
That's right.
Right. One more thing I've got for you. Do people have different metabolic rates?
Yeah, in general, it's mostly related to our body size and composition and, obviously our activity levels. So, someone who is 200 pounds, muscular, lean guy will have a higher metabolism than someone who's 150 pounds, Genetically, there are some differences there can be some variances in how many calories we burn at rest. However, they find it doesn't really predict weight gain in studies. So it's a myth it's true that we can have different metabolisms even at similar body sizes, but in general, our body size is really what dictates it, and our body composition can be differences, 10, 20%, but even still that. It's a myth that people have obesity from a different metabolism. The issue is the appetite. It's related to the appetite.
This has been wonderful. I think this does a really good job on the topic as a whole. You are very active on media. You share a lot of great information that people who want to learn more, I think a lot of listeners are probably already following you. You're very prominent in our space. You've been a prominent public speaker. I mean, the first time we met, you were speaking on stage and I was sitting in the audience, and that was really cool. I've been listening to you on podcasts and soaking up media stuff for years before that. Read your book. If I remember correctly, what was the title of your book? Fat Loss Prescription, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Good. Okay. I want to make sure I got that one.
I need to update that. I need to do a new one. It's been 10 years already. I can't believe.
Well, I mean, obviously a lot's changed in 10 years. It probably does need an update. And everybody can follow you on Instagram at Dr. Nadolsky. So did you and your brother fight over that one? How did that happen?
I was first to market.
Okay. I'm going to bring Carl on. He's great. He's a great resource too. So I'll get him on. And, a couple of months we'll have him. And the Docs Who Live podcast.
Yep, that's right. Docs Who Live podcast. If you want to hear us rant about all of GLP-1 and obesity and whatever else related to fitness and intermingled with health. Yeah. And then, if you're looking for all these GLP-1 meds and you want to do it the right way, my clinic, Vineyard, you can go to joinvineyard.com.
This has been fantastic. Masterclass in, fat loss, obesity, and all the related stuff. So thank you again. Everybody go follow Spencer. He's been a great resource to me for a really long time. And thank you guys again for tuning in. I appreciate y'all.